I'd love to help you get vulnerable. Let's get naked.
Hey everyone, I'm Anne. Welcome to the Let's Get Naked podcast, where we dive deep into vulnerability. In this space, we'll explore what triggers us, uncover the patterns holding us back, and discover how to take charge of our own growth. If you're ready to dig in, be vulnerable, and face the tough stuff, then buckle up. It's time to get naked. This is going to be a tough one today. You know what's been quietly tearing families apart for generations? The belief that silence is safer than truth. That pretending everything is fine is more important than actually being fine. So many families have mastered the art of brushing things under the rug, like it's some sacred tradition. We're taught not to rock the boat, not to bring up the past, not to talk about the things that actually hurt. Just keep the peace. Smile through the pain. Stay quiet to avoid making anyone uncomfortable. But let's call that what it really is, emotional cowardice, dressed up as family loyalty. The idea that silence somehow keeps the family strong is a lie. It doesn't protect anyone. It protects the dysfunction. It preserves cycles of shame, confusion, and emotional distance. When someone is struggling with mental health, we look the other way. When someone is hurt, we say, let it go, don't make a scene. When tension is obvious, we sweep it aside like it'll disappear if we ignore it long enough. But all that does is push the pain underground, where it festers. That pain doesn't go away, it grows roots. It becomes patterns. It gets passed down generation after generation until someone finally says enough. Families that refuse to talk about hard things don't avoid damage, they cause it. Unspoken resentments turn into walls. Unacknowledged traumas show up in how people parent, how they communicate, how they handle stress. Kids grow up feeling the weight of things no one ever explained, carrying shame for things they didn't cause, and learning to distrust their own emotions. Adults repeat patterns they swore they wouldn't because no one ever showed them how to process what they were feeling. Silence doesn't make families stronger. It just makes the pain quieter until it explodes or calcifies into lifelong distance. But here's the truth. Families that are willing to have honest, uncomfortable conversations are the ones that actually thrive. When people feel safe to speak up, to ask questions, to name what hurt them without being shut down, that's where real connection happens. That's where healing starts. Those families raise people who aren't afraid of emotions, who can name what they feel, who are more empathetic and resilient. They model accountability, not perfection. They show that love isn't about pretending everything is okay. It's about standing in the mess together and saying, we'll figure this out. When families stop pretending and start talking, they break cycles. They allow space for forgiveness, for boundaries, for change. They grow deeper relationships, not just surface-level holiday interactions. They become places where vulnerability is met with care instead of criticism. And sure, those conversations are hard. They can be messy, awkward, emotional, but discomfort is not the enemy. Discomfort is a sign that something important is happening, that the surface is cracking open to make room for something more honest, more human, and more healing. We need to stop romanticizing silence. We need to stop confusing avoidance with love. Real love faces the truth. Real love listens, apologizes, learns, and grows. It doesn't sweep things under the rug. It picks up the rug, looks at the mess underneath, and deals with it. Because we all deserve families where we can be fully seen and fully heard, not just tolerated when we're convenient. We deserve homes where healing is more important than image, and we deserve the chance to build something better than the silence we inherited. It's time to stop pretending that silence is golden when it's really just heavy. We are done with a rug full of secrets. Let's start flipping it over. Today, I'm stripping it all off with Mark and his daughter, Jackie. They are here today to be brave enough to look under the rug, to talk about trauma that has occurred in their family, and how they've handled it to date and ways to move forward towards healing. So welcome both of you to the show. I appreciate you both being here.
Thank you.
Yeah. I just want to say before we get started that the feedback that I have gotten from outside people that know me, people that don't know me about the podcast has been so positive and powerful that everyone is just so ready for these stories of the mess, because we can all relate to when we're listening to these about all the shit that happened that nobody talks about. I talk to people all the time and it's like, oh, we don't talk about that in my family. And I understand that because I also came from a family, when I was growing up, that if you just don't talk about it, it's not there. But the problem is exactly what I was reading at the beginning, it does fester and it does just come out sideways in ways that no one's proud of, And so being able to be sitting on this couch, brave enough and willing to talk about all the gross shit, right? I mean, you even telling your story, Mark, and having Jackie be able to listen to pieces that she maybe didn't know about will help her have a better understanding of who you are as a person, not just her father, right? But as a man sitting here next to her, it allows her to be so proud of you for being able to share that, right? Like, I had a conversation with my dad, and not to hijack this whole thing, but I do just want to really quickly say, I had a conversation with my dad this past weekend over Easter, and he shared stuff with me about his childhood. I've never been more proud of that man in my life. Mm-hmm. And he literally has done everything for our family. He was the rock of our family. But to have him say how that affected him when he had this happen or that happen, or, just feelings that he had towards other people in his family and things they didn't talk about, it blew my mind. Mm-hmm. As I watch my husband do that in front of our children, same, right? Like, yes, great, he can do all of these great things that hold our family together, but being willing to be vulnerable and say, this is what hurt me, this is how this happened, this is what I dealt with growing up, and say the things, right? We're not being quiet anymore. Like, that's my movement for stuff. We're saying all the things at full volume because we're not protecting anybody anymore. And it doesn't have to come from this place of burning people down, but coming from a place of speaking your truth, owning your truth, saying your truth. It gives other people permission to be able to do that for themselves as well. So I just wanted to tell you guys, so proud, so happy that you're here. And with that, we're going to just kind of turn it over to Mark a little bit and, let him share a little bit about his story growing up, what goes into the ingredients that make Mark the recipe that he is. And then Jackie's going to jump in and kind of tell some of her stuff as well. And just also, I think it's really important to highlight where you guys have failed with communication in your family, where you have room for improvement. We do that all the time at my house now, where there's nothing that's off limits. That was not always the case, with my daughters and with everybody. There used to be all sorts of shit that was off limits. It was too uncomfortable. It was too this. It was too that. I will tell you, after putting years into this, there's literally nothing in my house that's off limits. It's always a surprise. I'm never disappointed. Keeps things interesting. But the connections that I have with them, getting to do life with them in a way that's not just surface level bullshit, it's everything. It means everything. So I'm telling you, the work is worth doing. So with that, Mark, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you kind of share a little bit about who you are and how you got here.
Thanks, Anne.
Yeah.
And the lead-in's very appropriate because I think that is a very common issue with myself, and I think with a lot of people, especially when you're dealing with multiple siblings, dealing with large families, as I have. My mom's one of 14, Roman Catholic, dad school principal, very well-educated family. I think 3 of her brothers have doctorates. Every one of them has a college degree, most of them master's degrees. My grandfather on my dad's side was also a high school principal. My dad was a school teacher, mom was a school teacher. And there were very high expectations set for me from a very young age, both on the athletic side and on the education side. So I can remember my dad giving me a standardized math test before I was even in school. Age of 5, 6 years old, I'm taking, 7th, 8th grade math test. I'm doing calculus by the time I'm in 6th, 7th grade type of things. Just wanting me to be an overachiever in both education and in sports, because him and my grandfather both competed at sports at very high levels as well. So there was a lot of pressure put on me from a young age. However, not a lot of good guidance on how to get there. Just get there you figure it out.
Yeah.
It's tough for a young man to have those types of expectations without any real guardrails or true guidance and goals of how to get there. As far as we don't talk about things, definitely a big part of my growing up. Everything was very silent. Everything was very, keep it within the family. Don't even talk.
What is that?
You know,
like, I get it. That's that same, when you say keep it within the family, that sparks something for me, because that was very much like, we don't talk about that. We don't want other people to know. And I'm thinking, was there like an award that we got if we kept it like all keep the crazy like tucked in? I don't remember seeing the award, but we did that, where it was like, don't say anything. And even within the family, like within your immediate family, like, don't let grandma know. Don't let so-and-so know. And I'm thinking, these are people we're supposed to be doing life with. Why are we lying to people and like, oh, we're not going to say that. We're not going to say that. Like, what a bunch of bullshit.
I think even to this day, it's a competitive thing when you have that many siblings with my mother.
Okay.
Right?
Okay, that's a good perspective.
To where you have to be the perfect family. And your shit cannot stink to the rest of your brothers and sisters because you're the best. Because you are winning at life.
That's an interesting perspective. I appreciate you saying that. I'm going to have to unpack that one a little bit, because that lands like that. You're absolutely right. Like, no, we've got it all. The picture that we send on the Christmas card, that's really what we're doing behind the scenes as well. It's not just a Christmas card, even though we all know that's bullshit. But okay.
So, it's always the perfect family, right? Everybody's succeeding. Everybody's so smart.
Right.
Everybody's so
it's
great. And I get that to this day, even though I don't really have a relationship with my family, which we'll get into later.
Yeah.
My mother, even to this day, is in that competition stage with her siblings. And we'll talk about that a little bit at my father's funeral I attended in October, which was a surprise too, which we will talk about. But that was tough for me, because I not only saw that, heard that, I felt I had to live that. I had to fit those expectations of being the perfect child, of excelling at everything, at doing what I had to do with little or no parental guidance there.
Did you pass that down? And let me ask Jackie that before you... Let me ask you first. Do you think you passed that down?
Oh, yes.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah.
I mean, growing up, they had expectations for us, obviously, and those expectations were clear, but there wasn't much guidance on how to reach those expectations.
Isn't that funny? Is like, for me, when I sit and talk to my daughter specifically about the shit that I passed down to her, I look, as you're doing inventory on kind of what happened in your life, and like, oh God, that was so fucked up. And then I look and I go, I just passed that right on down, right? Didn't even realize, right? Which is what's so cool about knowing better, doing better, and the fact that we're sitting here having this conversation, and that there are people that can listen that go, I'm doing the same fucking thing. When my brother came on and he was talking about the shit that he got passed down from my parents, and he's like, he didn't even realize, it was like an aha moment on the couch of, I'm doing the exact same thing to my son that I'm now as an adult trying to heal from, because it was so damaging to me. I'm handing the exact same thing down, because we're just, that behavior is modeled to you, and it doesn't even occur to you. It's like, that's how you know to do it, and so you just pass it right on down.
They fucked me up without me realizing it, and I'm fucking my kids up without even realizing it.
Do you know that they didn't realize that, though? Because that's the biggest part of it, I think, for me, is being able to realize and show them grace in that whole situation, because they're just doing the best that they can, too. And I know that that's maybe a little bit further down the line when there's a lot of resentment and hurt feelings towards stuff, but they didn't know any better either. They knew less than we did, right? They had less knowledge at their fingertips than we do.
To a degree.
No, all the way. Think about this. Think about, your parents didn't have the internet. So if they were going to speak with someone, get knowledge about something, they had to find someone that had either done that or knew someone that had done that and was willing to talk about it. And we know no one was willing to talk about it. So literally, you've got your parents who are going in blind, unless you think your parents are complete psychopaths, which,
we'll get into that.
Maybe. I'm not suggesting either way. I don't know the whole story, but I will say, like, for me, that was a big step in my healing, is really being able to show my parents grace, because they fucked all sorts of stuff up. right? And I'll say that to their face, and they'll tell me and all of the different things. But the cool thing about it is having the perspective from the other side of it. And I think this conversation with you and Jackie here, where you can understand her perspective or she can understand your perspective, when you start to be able to gain that knowledge by just going on this exploration of your family and all of the gross stuff that lives under the surface and being willing to talk about, how did that make you feel? Where were you coming from in this? This is how I read this. Like, when you're able to do all of that, if you want her to show you grace, I will encourage you to show your parents grace. Not to them. You don't have to fucking do that to them. Just inside of you. Do you know what I mean? Like, just inside of you of, your mom had how many kids? You were one of how many?
3.
Okay, so she had 3 kids that in a time where she didn't have choices. If you look at women back in that time, I guarantee you your mom didn't have choices. Women didn't, right? So think about no knowledge, just with the shit that she was passed down, no choices, right? Now she's, however old she is, it's not like she's going to do the work. That's on our generations now, to do this work. But she was literally just doing the best that she could, right? She has all of the same components that you do with the feelings and the hurt and the not talking about shit and the pushing stuff under the rug. Seriously,
I got you there.
I better come in and start doing some exercises with this. Okay, we're gonna stop talking right there. Let's back to you, Mark. God, jeez.
Well, and so then, as I grew older, and my father was a school teacher,
Okay.
and he was a coach, and he was my coach, and he was my teacher all through high school. New dynamic there.
That's rough.
Right? Oh, I mean, incredibly rough. Front of the class, taking Calc 1, taking Calc 2 in high school, having to deal with that type of pressure, being on the teams with him. I remember I came down in practice one time, turned my ankle around backwards. I knew it was broke. He's like, walk it off. You're fine. That type of thing, right? I mean, and I'm like, no, this is broken. He's like, no, you're fine. I get home, the thing's like a softball.
Yeah.
Finally went to the hospital. It was broke. But, those types of things, it's like, rub dirt on it doesn't work, right? But he didn't know from that generation, right? You're supposed to be tough. You're supposed to walk things off.
Can I jump in really fast there? Because that was just an aha moment for me, because they did the exact same thing to me anytime I broke a bone.
Yeah.
Like, I broke my foot really bad in high school.
Yeah.
And I drove myself home from where I had broken it, and I sit on the couch, and he goes, "It's not broken.
I know.
It's fine. It's totally fine."
He didn't even, in his defense, he doesn't even know, which is crazy, which is why it's so important to talk about it, because it's like he's sitting here understanding the impact of that on him, that his dad was like, don't be a pussy, rub some dirt on it, we're going to fucking be fine. And then he does the exact same thing to you, even though he knows. I mean, now what that did for you.
Right,
you can look at that and go, God, that was so damaging to me as a young boy, right? Like, for me, I look back and it's like, there's something to me about looking back at an 8-year-old boy. 8-year-old is what comes to my head when I think about just the innocence of a child, going back to that place. You shouldn't be dealing with, don't be a pussy. You can't cry. Don't show your emotions.
Yeah.
Think about how that sets you up for success in life, about like, don't pay attention to your emotions. Again, they didn't know. They literally just were passing down what they were taught. But I look at that as we know more and as we develop ourselves emotionally and as we have all of this knowledge now, and I think, it's like putting a brick on your head energetically, and then you pass that brick on to her.
Yeah. And the other thing was, they were both working or going to school or doing whatever. So, I'm left on my own to get ready in the morning. We didn't have a lot of money, so I didn't wear the nicest clothes, even though I went to very expensive schools because of where they taught and stuff like that. So there was always a standard I had to keep up with. It was very difficult for me growing up of not being one of the rich kids, even though I was a popular kid, and not having the right clothes and everything else.
Yeah.
So, to this day, my wife gives me crap because I have about 60 pairs of shoes, maybe more now. I have 2/3 of my closet is my clothes, plus the office is full of my clothes. So,
I love this. I love this admission
so
right
true.
now. I
It
did
is.
not
So
know
true.
this about you, Mark.
Yes, I have way too many clothes. I even have.
But isn't that funny that was, where that stemmed from?
I know where that
You know
comes
exactly
from.
what it stemmed
I
from.
know.
So it's crazy. Like what that kind of an impact has on who you are as a human being. You're almost 60 years old, and it literally is all the way through.
The people at the office are like, I wonder what shirt you're going to wear for your
Can't wait.
birthday.
I love
Come on, surprise us. So I always try to wear something different to the office every single day.
Right.
You know, I always wear nice suits. So the one kid, God bless him, he just started, and he says, I was going to wear a suit, but I didn't have time to go get a good suit, and I wasn't wearing Men's Warehouse with you here. And I go, you didn't even know me. He goes, your reputation was before you, and I wasn't walking in with a Men's Warehouse suit.
It's deep ingrained shit.
It's
like
bad.
It's like when you're a kid and you don't. I understand. I was raised poor too, and it was like you're trying to keep up with something that is not attainable when you don't have any fucking money.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I know.
But it's still
I've got enough clothes for a small country now.
Okay.
I mean, I really do.
Okay. So how were your parents then growing up as far as, you know, fostering emotional intelligence or
nothing.
okay, got
nothing.
it. Zero.
Yeah, I mean, it was void.
Okay.
Completely void. And it was almost as if at times with my dad working 2 jobs, being a teacher and everything, and it was I'll spend time with you if you need help in sports or in school. But outside of that, we'll take the family vacations to keep up look at us, we're the perfect little family. And I think they tried to be good parents, but they didn't really know how to really develop that emotional side of me, that understanding side of me, that self-awareness that you need, that goal planning. You know, it's like you need to be here, but we don't know how to get there, and we don't know how to guide you there, but just get there, and that's our expectation.
But do you see how, can you look at that from the outside? So now that we've talked a little bit about the things that you've passed down to Jackie and her brother that you didn't know, right? That you did the best that you could with what you had, right?
Yeah.
Can you see how impactful it would be if you were able to do that work to understand that with your parents, right? Because I don't believe that you think they're psychopaths. I believe that maybe they've done some things because...
We'll get there still.
I know, but here's the whole thing. Here's the whole thing that I want to just point out to you, because I'm always going to play the devil's advocate on this one. Because I know what it felt like prior to giving my parents grace, and I know what it feels like after giving my parents grace. And again, it doesn't necessarily have to be to them. It's just internally inside of me. But when I did that, when I had this aha moment where I was expecting my daughters to be able to show me grace for how I fucked them up, but I couldn't show my mom grace, that was a powerful thing for me, right? Because as soon as I was able to like switch that and do that work, the floodgates opened with my daughters showing me grace. Not because they saw me even doing that. It was almost like the universe just having this understanding of like, okay, she's ready to see the other side of that. Because you talk about, okay, yes, they didn't have the knowledge. They gave you what they could. They were working 2 jobs to put food on the table and handing down the things that they could that they knew to hand down. They didn't know the rest of it. So if you can say, I believe that they did the best that they could. Inherently, I think everyone does the best that they can with what they have. Obviously, we know better. If I look back at the Anne from 10 years ago, Jesus Christ, she didn't know better. She didn't know better, right? So in that moment, I did everything that I could to try to be the best version of myself that I could. Is it better now? Absolutely. I think if you're doing it right, you should be able to look back over a year and go, wow, look at all this improvements that I've made. Because we're supposed to work on ourselves in that way. But, you know, showing your parents grace for that, just a little nugget. I'm just planting a little seed, Mark.
No, totally.
Just a little seed planting.
Over the last 5 years, I wish I had the insight, the owning my shit, all of that.
Yeah.
I wish I'd had that back in my teens. Instead, I get it in my 50s, right?
Well,
but I got it. At least I got it.
At least you got it.
Before it's too late, right? And I hope that I'm helping with them. We'll see. She'll tell you.
We'll do an exit interview tomorrow.
We will know.
We'll do an exit interview,
But then the childhood turns into I went to a school you're well familiar with. That it's a very, at the time, probably the best high school in the country. One of the best. Most of them went to Ivy League, that you graduate from there. So my mother went back to school to get her master's degree my sophomore year. The end of my sophomore year, she leaves the house. She just up and moves out. Doesn't say goodbye, nothing, just leaves. The whole family.
Sophomore high school.
Sophomore in high school. After 20 years of marriage, gone for the summer. Dad doesn't know why, crying. That's about the only emotion I ever saw from the guy. He was so upset. All of a sudden, she comes back at the end of the summer. Like nothing ever happened. She said she had breast cancer and didn't want to die in front of us and left. I said, okay.
Fuck.
Wait.
That's heavy.
Gets worse. A lie. she had met a man while she was going to school, moved out to be with him, didn't find a job, decided she needed to come back because she couldn't afford to support herself. Now, this time my dad was done and he left. So now I have to live with her and this. Knowing this, she doesn't know I know this, can't call her out on it.
Because we don't talk about things.
We don't talk about these
Push
things.
that shit right under the rug. Okay, mom's got breast cancer.
So
no, she doesn't.
Working with my dad on the weekends.
Okay.
And seeing him cry and just devastated from this whole crap. Got to go home and watch her drink and get angry. And one night she sat there calling him the devil because he left and now he's got a new girlfriend. And I said, you know what? I'm tired of your shit. You need to shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
She threw the wine glass at me. I took 38 stitches in my leg and shin. Rushed me to the hospital, of course. She asked me to lie to the doctors about what had happened, which I did for her and, you know, keep it in the family.
Sure, of course.
But took the 37 stitches for her and said, you know, this is bullshit. I'm going to go live with Dad for a while. And I did that for a while. That didn't really work out. And so moved back with her. She, you know, financial problems, yada, yada, everything else. So I went to work, support her, don't go to college right away, to stay home and take care of Mom. About at the age of 20 or so, she meets a new guy and wants me out of the house, even though I had been taking care of her for several years. So, is what it is. Move out. Fortunate enough, at 21, I meet my wife at the time. Well, excuse me.
She's still your wife, I'm pretty sure.
Wait a minute.
She's my...
Sorry, Amy.
It's like I like to tell her she's my first wife.
First and only wife.
Yeah, but this June 30th will be 32 years of marriage.
Wow.
Happy marriage.
Yeah.
Best friend. I'm married so far over my head, it's ridiculous.
We all know.
Yeah.
We know.
we know. I know.
That
Everybody
goes without
knows.
saying.
She is the most beautiful woman ever.
She's the best.
Yeah. Started dating her. She was 16. I was 21. It happens.
Scandalous.
Scandalous.
Yeah.
Didn't talk about that until just now.
Yeah, I'm like, why do you think I always dated older, right?
All right.
She told me she was 18. We met. Funny story. Me and my buddies cruising Central, see the chicks, pull them over, get their numbers, go out on a date. She's on her fall break, whatever. Thought she was 18. Our first movie was Fatal Attraction. Our first date.
I love that.
Yeah, I know. And she went home and told her mom that night after our first date, that is the man I'm marrying.
Okay.
So that was it.
Okay.
We've been together ever since. So, except for a couple times I broke up with her like a freaking idiot.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I did. But we ended up together, and I couldn't be happier. She's everything. My rock, everything.
Does she? Do you get along with your? You don't get along with your mom now. When, like,
so
at what point?
we'll get to that.
Okay.
A little.
All right.
I guess this is a good way to go.
So
there.
I would segue it only because we only have an hour show. And so
Yeah. So then moved in with my sister, help her out. She has 3 boys. Her husband gets murdered. He's a piece of drug user. Everything else gets murdered by a gang, etc. So then fast forward, my sister calls me from Dallas, says, hey, she's bawling. She says, did you know that our nephew's daughter is accusing him of molestation?
Okay, so now I want to get this straight
This
for
is
a
my
second.
sister's son.
Your sister's son. So your nephew.
My nephew.
How old was he at that time?
He is about 23 at this time. He's got a 3-year-old daughter.
And who was the one? How old was the person accusing him?
3 years old.
Oh.
It's his own daughter.
Oh. Well, and that happens. We've learned on the podcast that happens all too often.
And his ex-wife was filing charges.
Okay.
So we decided, did he do something to Jacqueline? And we asked Jacqueline, and she was 12 at the time, and she broke down. And it did happen.
You didn't say anything, Jackie, until they came and asked you?
Yeah, the way that it all happened.
I don't mean that don't take that the way that I said it, because I have my own shit, and like it's interesting how stuff comes out, but I find that fascinating that was a question that came this way instead of you telling them that way. Okay.
Yeah, I vividly remember that day. So it all happened when between the ages of 5 and 7.
Okay.
And I remember my cousins, the the middle cousin of the 3 boys from that sister. Him and his wife had come over to talk about it. And my mom, my dad, my cousin, and his wife were outside, and my mom asked me, and I didn't even say anything. I just broke down crying. Yeah. And I just remember her running to the back door and just pounding on the door for my dad to come inside. And that was a crazy day in itself. And that was the first time where I'm like, okay, we're not talking about this, because I was due to go to a friend's house that night. And my mom was like, I was sobbing, and she was washing my face off in the sink of like the tears. And she was like, you're not going to talk to her about this at all while you're over there. She was like, you need to keep it to yourself. She was like, we're not going to talk about this. She was like, especially since we're going to be filing charges and all of this stuff. And so from that moment on, we kept it to our immediate family. But yeah, that was the first time I ever told anyone about it, was to my mom. I almost told a best friend of mine growing up, actually a couple years, 2-3 years prior to me telling my mom. And something held me back. And the main thing was his voice in the back of my head saying, don't tell anybody, you know? But then from there, you can kind of take it over, because you guys had gone to go over to his house, right?
Yeah, so...
To murder him, or?
Yes.
Okay.
No, seriously.
No, listen,
I'm not kidding.
I have the same shit that has happened in my family in different areas, and that is the first thing that comes to mind.
Or not,
no.
But,
I say murder all the time on this. I don't know if that's the right thing or not.
Had his brother with him, and by the way, he had molested his own brother when he was younger.
Yep.
The guy was a real sick SOB.
Yep.
I actually paid $10,000 in attorney fees because he had sex with 2 underage girls, and I paid $10,000 for an attorney to keep this SOB out of jail. If I'd known, I would never have. Kid was just a wreck. You know, he had 2 girls pregnant out of wedlock within a month of each other after he left his first wife. He's just a real sexual predator, piece of crap.
Yeah.
So we went over to his house. There may or may not have been a gun involved. He didn't answer the door. It was going to look like an accident if something happened. Went to my sister's house. He showed up there and talked to him. And I don't remember type of stuff, right? Had my phone on the table recording. He didn't understand that. And I got up and I went over to him and I said, if you ever touch my daughter again, I will kill you. Yeah. And I smacked him across the face. Yeah. And I said, don't even get up. It's the last thing you'll do. Yeah. And I walked out. Yeah. We pressed charges. They 100% believed it was enough to prosecute.
He's in jail right now, right?
He's 51 years without parole.
Yeah. They locked him
up.
The
jury threw the book at him. During the trial, it was unbelievable. My mother, my oldest sister, my middle sister, got up on the stand and made us the bad guys. We were the bad guys. I was doing it to get even with him, which was a joke, because I got him a job at where I was working. He got fired for fraud.
Yeah, it doesn't.
But for somehow that was supposed to have been me getting even, because he got fired for fraud, even though I got 3 promotions after that.
What does that feel like having your, well, God, that's a really complicated dynamic, because you understand the love that you have for your kids. And if someone came and accused your kid of something, right? Like what does that even look like, right? For who you defend and whose side you take and all of that. Like, I'm not justifying anyone's behavior on anything. I'm just coming from a place of curiosity. That's a family ender. What you guys are talking about. We don't go back from that. Like, I always am going to come from the side of, okay, let's work it out. Let's whatever. If you never talk to him again, I'm on your side. Just so you know, like that's.
No, yeah. And I took the stand in the trial. My sister flew in from Dallas and took the stand, which was outrageous because she didn't really have any inside information about what was going on, about who she was, about any of this.
She tried to sit there, and at the time, so I was about 13 once the trial actually happened. And at that point, his father was actually paying for me to do local community theater. And they tried sitting there and they were like, well, she acts. So obviously she's acting and she's making this up.
That's hurtful.
Yeah. And it's like, then she used a story of me on the stand from when it was a few years prior, and that particular cousin, we had given him one of our cats, and he got rid of the cat and gave it to some random person instead of offering to give it back to us. And I cried as a 9-year-old kid. Of course, you're going to sob when you just had a family member get rid of one of your favorite animals. And so she tried to use that against me on the stand and call me over dramatic. So it was like they were reaching for stuff.
Well, here's what I'll say. This screams out to me. They're hurt and they're lashing out, right? Because that whole saying about hurt people, they don't even know how to process what was brought to their front door, especially from a place where you're a family that doesn't talk about shit, right? Now you're coming out with this facts and are willing to speak about it because that's the right thing to do, right? Bringing this up, taking this to trial, that's the right thing to do, right? That in and of itself, what that allows for other people, so that when people go to their parents or to other people and speak their truth, we believe them. We don't question that shit, right? Like, that's where we need to be as a society, where it isn't, oh, we're going to make you, the person who then we're going to victimize again by not believing what you say. It's outrageous. If we teach our daughters nothing, it's when the perpetrator says, don't tell or whatever, we need to teach our children, you speak up. You speak up at full volume, because you can heal the shit that happened, right? It's the shame that you carry around after that. Think about that. Think about that, Jackie, for like, okay, yes, this fucked up thing happened, which is disgusting. But think about how much of a bigger impact carrying that shame around, not being able to go to your parents and say, this motherfucker did this to me, right? In which case we'll get you help, to heal from that. We'll support you. We'll believe you. Right? That to me is where we have to make big changes for stuff. We can't have it where we're not talking about it, where it's, oh, we can't bring that. We're supposed to have our parents and our family be our defenders. And it's unfortunate that your sisters and your mom went the way that they did. As far as I'm concerned, enjoy your lives. Right? Yeah. Like, you can offer forgiveness to them for you, which I highly encourage you to do if you haven't done that, because if not, you're carrying that shit around, not them. And just, they did the best that they could in that situation. It's unfortunate that it turned out the way that it did, and it's unfortunate that their best is pretty basic bitch shit, right? Yeah. But that's their best, right?
Yeah, and then at the sentencing, I chose not to read my statement. I gave the statement to the judge for sentencing. I really wanted to take the high road in the whole thing. I said nothing derogatory or negative on the stand. I wasn't happy when he was convicted. We sat there very stoic, did not want to celebrate any of it. Right. We really wanted to just let them know this was a hard thing. Yeah. Because it goes back to the keep it in the family of, they thought I should have not prosecuted. Because we needed to keep it within the family.
Of course.
He would have learned his lesson.
Yeah, we don't want to bring attention to that.
Yeah, no,
we're not doing that.
You're going away so that you don't victimize other people, which would have happened.
Of course. No, you don't. That's a pattern. That's a pattern when you have. It's a sick human being. It really is that is not going to accept help or look for help when he can't admit what he has done. Yeah. The first step is admitting you have a problem, right? And that's a problem, what he had. So my father got up there, though, during the victim statement, him and his wife at the time, and defended him. And again, made us look like we were unduly prosecuting. God, that's fucking terrible.
It was horrible. So I made the decision at that time. I did not need that in my life. Right. So you talk about the giving them forgiveness for what they've done and everything else.
Not for them, for you.
Yes.
For you.
For me, I'm as at peace as I could be with it, right? So at peace with it that I found out that my father had died last year sometime, and they were having the ceremony up in Kansas to bury him next to my grandparents in October. I said, you know what? I'm going to reach out to my sister, get the details, and I'm going to show up for his funeral. So I made peace with that part of it. Least I could do. Well, that caused some problems with my wife.
Oh, I bet. I've met Amy.
Yeah. So, you know, I was at the point where I was willing to look past everything and at least give them the grace.
Yeah.
Not happening with Amy.
Mm-hmm.
Amy left me that night.
Yeah, I believe
said,
that.
No.
Amy's so hurt in that situation. How could you not be? As a mother, when in that situation,
Completely.
not only is your daughter in a situation where you didn't defend her because she didn't know. Like as a mom, when your daughter comes and brings that shit to your front door, it's literally the most helpless feeling on the planet. Like, and there's nothing you can do to go back and fix that. To go back, like it literally is the worst possible feeling. And then to have not only no support from your family, but then also you guys are the villains in that story because you wanted to make something right. Like, she's not wrong.
No,
she's not wrong.
She's not
right?
wrong. And I asked Jacqueline if it was okay.
Yeah, yeah.
She's like, yeah, go ahead, reach out. And my older sister, no, definitely not, because she didn't want to talk to me anymore.
Yeah,
I know she would rather see me dead than anything,
that's okay.
and that's fine.
Yep.
My mother misses me.
Yeah.
Her boy, her youngest.
Yeah.
But she's still a crazy woman, but she's still my mother.
She's still your mom. You know, there's something to be said for that relationship. I can't imagine. This is part of, for me, doing the work that I'm doing, is I can see all of the perspectives, right? I see Amy's perspective. Oh, yeah. I see Jackie's perspective. I see your perspective. I see your mom's perspective. Yeah. I look at my son right now and I think, I can't imagine. Like, it would rip my soul out to not have a relationship with him in any capacity. Like, so I understand that, right? Like, I understand that from the mom and for you as the son wanting to actually foster something that's there, right?
Yeah, and it's funny because this emotion's coming more from my wife and her than from the loss of my family.
Yeah.
And that's where it's crazy,
yeah.
right? Because, you know, losing that relationship is less important than losing my wife and my daughter.
Yeah.
You know,
right.
It's insane, but it is what it is.
There's so much hurt to go around in that situation.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so multi-layered for how all of that went down.
Right. Well, and I think even too for my parents, they didn't realize how much it affected me, especially into my adulthood, because I was state mandated to go to therapy, and the state paid for it, which was great and everything, but my mom had a really hard time finding me a therapist because a lot of therapists didn't want to deal with a child that was actively going through a trial.
Yeah.
Which was kind of crazy to me.
Right. You would think that you would want to support that, but I understand, like, liability.
And I get it. Yeah, liability-wise, I totally understood that. But I think with his family reaching back out, they mainly reached back out and were able to reach back out when his father died, because my brother had been in contact with them. And my brother was kept out of the dark from a lot of the situation. He wasn't at the trial at all. He was in college at the time, so he didn't know. And he also didn't understand how it affected my childhood, and how my childhood was vastly different than what his was. So I don't blame him for that, but he also didn't see the fact that my grandmother was sitting there as I was on the stand for an hour and a half. She was laughing at me. She was making comments, to the point where the judge had to threaten to throw her out of the courtroom multiple times. But when his family had reached back out, he had asked me if I wanted to speak with my aunt, particularly the one that lives in Texas, and because her and I had a really close relationship, and her testifying was a blindside. We had no idea. She told me that she supported me from the beginning, that she'd be there for me, and then she turns and testifies against me. And so I think that was one of the moments that like triggered for me to have abandonment issues that I'm still unpacking and just like digging through to this day. Yeah. And so he had asked me if I wanted to talk to them, and I was like, you know what? I was like, they've missed every single important life event in my life. They don't know who I am. Right. They've missed out on over half of my life at this point. Yeah. Like, why would I allow someone in who's caused me so much hurt and caused me so much mental damage? Right. Why would I let them back in? Right. Why would I ever let them come back into my life and wreak havoc again? Because we know they haven't changed. Right. And I mean, even my brother talked to me after the funeral, and he had talked to my grandmother and both of my aunts, and he was like, they're fucking crazy. Yeah. He's like, they're still crazy to this day. And I was like, yeah. I was like, now you are finally realizing what I had to endure and all the crazy bullshit they were throwing at me.
Well, and being able to put a period at the end of it and say, this isn't going to be a thing. Like, it's unfortunate, Mark, that you're not going to have that relationship. But if Amy says, this is an either or, like, I'm either in or I'm out, and this is a deal breaker for me, which I stand behind her in that situation. I totally understand that. There's so much hurt and multi-layered in this whole situation. Normally, I'm not the fan of like cutting people off and whatever, but I also understand that like you can have a chosen family as well. You know, you can have the people that are important, that ride hard for you now, that you don't have to always have this conflict for, because life is too fucking short, right? So what is the lesson that we're meant to learn in that is where I come from, which is it's okay that that's not those people. You can say, you did the best that you could. This wasn't a good situation for anybody, right? This isn't a good situation for your mom, for your sisters. Can you imagine if somebody had come and said that about your son, and then what the fuck would you do? Like, you can understand the other side of that, but it doesn't mean you have to have a relationship with them. It doesn't mean that you can't just say, you know what, that was where that was, and we're moving on. You know, you can do that and allow them to just stay in your family and shore things up with your family. What have you done, Jackie, as far as just kind of like working through this therapy-wise or otherwise? Or because when something like that happens that young, I don't think a lot of people that don't understand that can get their heads around how that really spiders into every part of your life. Your self-worth, like you're talking about abandonment and rejection. Like you got about as fucked up as it gets, honestly, because of the trial and the people not supporting you, and then, you know, again, making you the villain in that story when you're a child. Like, I can't even, I can feel Amy's anger from here, and Amy, you're right. So that's crazy.
Yeah, I think I didn't start realizing how much of an effect it had on me until I got into college and in my 20s, and I finally got out of the house. I think one of the turning points for me to actually start talking about it to other people outside of my family. So I didn't talk about it to like a friend even until I was about 16, 17. So the trial ended when I was about 13. So I mean, like 3-4 years later, I didn't start talking about it. And it all came up because I had a friend whose mom did tarot card readings. And my past card, the first word that popped up with it was abuse. And then abandonment after it. And I just sobbed. And it just released it. But within my 20s, I mean, obviously I'm still in my 20s, but my like early 20s and getting into college and stuff, I wreaked havoc on my life in my college years. Made a lot of bad decisions. I hurt my family a lot through that. But I think a lot of that stemmed from the fact of they didn't understand my mental health issues. They didn't realize that it had stemmed from the trial and from all of that trauma. And I remember the first time I ever realized that it was abandonment issues that I was dealing with. I had told my mom, and I was like, hey, I think I have abandonment issues. Like, my therapist and I were kind of talking about it. And my mom's like, what are you talking about? You don't have abandonment issues. Like, your parents are still together, like all of this stuff. And I was like, no, like, think about it. Like, actually, like, I lost my entire family. Like, my mom's side of the family is small, very small in comparison to the side of the family that we had with his side. And so I just felt like I lost all of it, and I didn't realize that. And halfway through college for me, it was a little more than halfway. It was this summer going to my senior year of college. Some issues arose with my brother, and he left my life for a while. I also left his. And that triggered my abandonment issues. I also was seeing a guy at the time, and he left my life, and I felt like I didn't have anyone. And from that moment, I almost took my own life. And that was one of the hardest things to have to explain to my parents, like, hey, like, I'm not okay. Like, all of this trauma is now coming up for me, and I'm having to work through it, and I don't know how to, and I didn't know how to. And so I was admitted to the mental hospital. And I think that was kind of the turning point for our family in terms of hey, maybe we should take mental health seriously. Maybe we should.
This isn't just a buzzword. This isn't just a buzzword that they're talking about. Like,
right. Yeah. And I think from that moment on, I've been very grateful for my parents and how they've, accepted my mental health issues and are more understanding of, all of the all of the labels that they have decided to put on me, as they do within the mental health industry. And I think it's still kind of hard for them to understand that it's a daily battle, right? Even within my relationship with them and my relationship even with my partner. I'm so grateful to have such a patient partner as I'm like unpacking these abandonment issues, even within our relationship.
They're everywhere.
They're
literally
everywhere.
Seep into everything, which is, when things trigger you, get curious about where they're coming from, because if you just keep pushing that stuff down, right? So like what you're talking about of having a patient partner or having your parents be willing to speak with you about stuff, you have to show your parents grace, because they were raised in a generation where it was, don't be a pussy. We're not going to deal with emotions, right? So your mom and I used to be twins. I happen to have come to the dark side where I now allow myself to be vulnerable and emotional. She's probably disappointed in me, let's be honest. Like, Jesus Christ. But it doesn't matter. Your mom and I used to twin in that, because I was raised the same way, that emotions are vulnerability and that's a weakness and like all of the things. So you have parents that raised you who started from that place, who we didn't talk about stuff, to now we talk about all the things, right? Your dad is sitting here on this couch, brave enough to have these conversations while you talk about this stuff, which kudos to both of you guys, because it's big stuff. But I think so much good comes from that, because you can really get to know the effect that this had on your dad, of losing his entire family, right? I mean, yes, you guys are this family, but your siblings and your parents, that's your family too, right? I mean, it's a different layer of that. He doesn't have any of that anymore. Right? And because, which is, I have full body goosebumps right now, which is completely fair to say that. And I don't disagree with your choice, but I still understand that that's a huge loss, and grieving that, right? I mean, so there's so many different layers. So for them to even be at this point of, let's talk about these things. Help me understand. And I've done that with my daughters too, of like, help me understand, because I didn't deal with mental health. I've woken up on the right side of the bed every day my entire life. And isn't this great? So when my daughters are like, I'm fucking depressed, I can't get out of bed. I'm like, well, just do it. Just get out of bed. And they're like, you don't understand. But that's the generation that your parents and I come from, is like, well, shake it off, Yeah. But that's not how it works, And so for us that grew up in that generation, we're at a loss, because we don't understand, some of that kind of stuff.
And I think with that too, I've always given my parents grace when it comes to that situation, because I couldn't imagine being in their shoes. Yeah. But I think the real pivotal moment of when I saw my dad struggling was with his drinking. Mm-hmm. It was hard for me to have to watch, as it was during COVID, and I'll let him expand more on that. But I was so angry at him for doing that, wasting his life away, is what it looked like to me. But I also had to understand that he was fighting his own demons, that he didn't want to voice to my mom and I. Mm-hmm. And that was hard for me, because I was voicing my own demons, but I felt like I didn't give him the space to also do that. But I also don't know if that's where the drinking stemmed from. But for me, that's what I saw. I saw a man who was suffering. Yeah. I saw a man who had lost his whole family, and I couldn't help but feel guilty for that. Right. In a way. Yeah. I had so much guilt it felt like I ripped his family away from him. It felt like, but at the same time, I also had survivor's guilt. Yes. There's not a lot of women out there who get the opportunity to have their abuser locked in jail for 52 fucking years. Yeah, that's a big deal. That's a really big deal. And later on, I had found out about him doing it to younger women. Mm-hmm. And my dad paying for that attorney and stuff. And I'm like, God, what a fucking slap in the face. Yeah.
How long have you been sober, Mark?
October, I've got my prison tat up here, actually, with the date. October 21st will be 5 years.
Good for you.
So, and I think, it's kind of weird, because I think corresponding with her mental health growth, acceptance has corresponded with mine from a standpoint of I am a completely different person than I was 5 years ago. I mean,
I believe that.
Every way, shape, and form.
I believe that.
This is going to get real emotional because Amy, the black soul,
The black soul. I love. She's going to stick with that nickname.
Was the most unbelievable, supportive, caring, loving rock that any man could ever have. You know, when I got sick, I was sick, and I think you know that.
I fucking know. I've never talked to Amy scared in my life.
Yeah.
I remember where I was standing when she called me.
Yep.
She said he won't fucking listen to me. Like,
That's typical.
put that motherfucker on the phone. You know, I mean, she was scared. She was scared. You
should have been.
You were in bad shape. Like,
I was dying.
For those that
sick.
don't know Mark, like Mark drank himself to a bad cirrhosis situation and other medical stuff where his body was shutting down.
It was MELD scores are the health of the liver score that they determine whether or not you need a transplant. 15 is your number for a transplant. I was at a 25, 26 at that point. That is done.
Yeah.
That is,
Donezo.
you're done.
Yeah.
So thank God with Amy, she basically tied me to the car.
Yeah, and said we're going in.
Drove me in. And the other thing that was a saver, and I won't give them a free plug on your thing, but there is a transplant organization here in town which is worldwide known. I mean, they are the most it's like the country club of hospitals. The most unbelievable thing. They had, I think, 14 doctors assigned to me. I still to this day have to go to follow up because I went there. They told me what I needed to do. I had to make the choice. I did not believe I was an alcoholic, and I'll tell you why.
Fascinating.
Tell you why.
Fascinating.
I thought the same thing.
I fucking knew I had a problem for years. You went in and you didn't know you were an alcoholic?
Absolutely.
Oh, Mark, say more.
So here's the thing. I realize now there are different levels of it. Okay? Me, my family, an alcoholic is somebody on the street corner.
Yeah.
An alcoholic is somebody that can't keep a job.
Yeah, you were
that's
functioning.
in jail.
Yeah, you were functioning.
That is getting
things.
DUIs, that is beating their wife, that can't keep a relationship together. That's an alcoholic.
Yeah.
A guy who has a professional career, a wife of 20 plus years, 2 kids he's put through college, a advanced degree in mathematics.
Sure, smart guy.
Is not an alcoholic. Not an alcoholic. Alcoholics come in very different forms.
You look back now and you realize the error of
I
your
realize
ways, right?
now that if I needed to drink, I'm an alcoholic.
Yeah.
And I needed to drink.
Yeah.
Right? That made me an alcoholic.
Yeah.
My liver told me, you're an alcoholic.
Yeah.
I had underlying medical conditions, but that's no excuse. If I didn't drink, I wouldn't have been in that condition.
Have you unpacked why you drank?
You know, I think it was a excuse for me.
Mm-hmm.
It was a way for me to not deal with the real pain.
Yeah.
And not deal with the real issues.
That was your number of choice, right?
It
That was my
was.
number of choice as well, too. And we can
Right.
all...
It's an easy choice, Anne.
It is an easy choice because it's
an easy
very
choice.
socially acceptable.
Right.
It's, for me, I was in construction, and the more I could drink, the more street cred I had with the construction dudes, and it was like, oh, she can really put them back. I was like, oh, yeah. What that should say to you is, oh, she's got a pile of shit she's numbing. She can really fucking pour on top of that. Very impressive. Very impressive.
So I think there's a problem, though, with... There's a correlation to me between the mental health of people and how long it has been a stigma to look at. There's not really something wrong with them.
Yeah.
What is, because you can't see a broken mind. You can't see like you can see a broken leg or a broken limb. Okay, it's a sickness though. You have a sickness if you have mental health, and you need to be able to manage it, work through it, medicate it, however you get through it. Alcoholism's the same way, but society doesn't look at it the same way.
No.
Society looks at an alcoholic as a broken person who is less than.
We as
and that
alcoholics
needs to be broken.
destroy our lives in the process of doing all of that. So
Yes.
I'm proud of you for 5 years.
Thank you.
That's a really powerful thing.
Yeah, and I give back now because
that's all we're supposed to do.
part of the program that they made me go to.
Yeah, I know.
You know.
I've met your sponsor. She's
I
amazing.
met my sponsor.
She's amazing.
I know her well.
Yeah.
She's the best person
Yeah.
ever.
Yeah.
They made me go to IPO,
Yeah.
intensive outpatient, or IOP, intensive outpatient therapy. And I'm sitting here going, why am I here?
Yeah.
I don't need this. And you know what? I didn't, because I'll tell you what, by the second class, I was teaching it. Okay. Then I realized you are supposed to be here, Mark. You know why? Because you're in as bad a shape as all of these people that are on the call, laying in their bed, feeling sorry for themselves, thinking they're going to die.
Yeah.
You're here for a reason.
Yeah.
You're here to give them a reason to live.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. So I still go back to that same intensive outpatient therapy group.
Yep.
They invite me back to speak to their people they're having a hard time getting through.
I love it.
Because I am now off the liver transplant list. My MELD score is normal, basically, like a normal person.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
From how bad of a shape you were to sitting here across.
Incredible. And I'm so much more at peace. I understand people. I meditate. You've got to find this solace in yourself. And if you need an external source, God, whatever that may be, find it.
Yep.
Find
your higher power wherever that is.
Exactly right.
Doesn't matter what it looks like for you, but
your higher power could live within yourself.
It's really
totally
can.
True.
Yeah.
Right? Because I think the human mind is so powerful, and your will to live is so powerful. If you give yourself a reason to live, you've just got to find that reason, whether it's for yourself, for a beautiful family like me.
Absolutely.
You've got to find that, because if you don't, you're just committing suicide.
Yeah. Slowly.
But anyway.
Put the bottle to your head and pull the trigger. I mean, it's a real
it's
a real
exactly
thing. And
it.
as you, Jackie, watching that, if you haven't already had big conversations about what that impact had, I encourage you guys to do that, because I think you learn a lot about each other in doing that, and not from a place of being defensive, right? Nobody has to, this is what it is, right? You don't have to defend yourself. You don't have to defend yourself, but it is fascinating in a family dynamic to really be able to unpack and say, this is the impact this had on me, and then just hold space for each other as you talk through that stuff. If you don't come back from a place of defensive, so much growth happens in that, so much healing. It's crazy. Yeah. Well, thank you guys for coming on today. I could have talked to you guys for hours and hours and hours, but they're going to cap us at 1. So thank you, Casey. We appreciate you. So yes, for this week, may I suggest talking with your family, having big conversations where you don't come from a place of defensiveness, just from a place of curiosity. So that's our time for today. If you have questions, suggestions, or think you have a story that you'd like to add to the podcast, send us an email. Our email address is ladies@letsgetnakedpodcast.com. And then do all the things to support the pod so that we can continue to do this important work. Follow, share, rate, and review. We will catch you next time. That's a wrap.
I'd love to help you get vulnerable. Let's get naked.